Well, I know most of you have cars, and since you're watching this video, I'm guessing you like cars, but how much do you really know about cars? Well, today I'm gonna go over a bunch of car facts, and we're gonna see which ones you know and which ones you don't know. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. For those of you new to the channel, my name is Mark, and today we're gonna talk about some automotive facts that you may or may not know. Ever since I was a little kid, I have loved cars. I've had Hot Wheels, I've had remote control cars. I've always been fascinated by them. So eventually, as I grew older, I got into the automotive field and became a technician so that I could work on cars.
No, piece of shit.
I've been in this industry for about 2 decades now, and I've learned a few different things along the way that I want to share with you guys. So let's get started with car fact number 1. Everybody seems to think for some reason that Henry Ford was the first one to build cars. That's false. Now, what Henry Ford was actually known for doing was creating the assembly line for automotive production. And with that assembly line, Henry Ford was able to produce more cars than anybody else out there, which brought down the production costs, which made cars cheaper. So the average person can now afford a car. That's me! And most likely you guys as well. Now, for who actually came out with the world's first automobile, it was back in 1886, Carl Benz came out with it. Yeah, that Benz. Mercedes-Benz, I'm sure you've heard of them. This was a 3-wheeled vehicle powered by a 4-stroke single-cylinder engine. And it wasn't very fast, but it was the world's first automobile, at least considered to be. The engine, it produced about 3/4 of a horsepower, which by today's standard is not anything. But if you actually look at it, it's not supposed to be a fast car. It'll do about 10 miles an hour, which back in the day was still much faster than walking. Now that you and me can actually purchase a vehicle because of Henry Ford, and he's made them a little bit cheaper. They're not as cheap as they used to be, but they're cheap enough that we can buy them. Let's talk about putting fuel in these things. When we're driving a vehicle, and obviously it's not a normal vehicle to us, say we borrow a car, get a rental or anything like that, how are we supposed to know which side the fuel tank is on? So as an example here, we have a Ford Mustang and we got the Chevy Camaro. How are we supposed to tell which side the fuel tank is on? Because if we look over here on the Mustang, we got the fuel door on this side. Look, it's on the driver's side. But if we take a look at the Camaro does not have a fuel filler door on the driver's side, it's on the passenger side. So with car fact number 2, how did the manufacturers tell us which side the fuel door is on without us getting out? So for an example right now, I got our Mustang right here. I got the key turned on. Let's walk in, take a look. We're gonna open the door and we'll get in here. So if we take a look at our gauges, we can see the fuel gauge right here. And if you also notice on the fuel gauge, there's a little pump emblem right there. Here, let me zoom in for you. All right, if we take a look at the fuel emblem right there, if you notice, there's a little arrow on the side. The arrow on the side of it is pointing to the direction the fuel filler neck is on. And just to show you the same thing on the Camaro, how on the Mustang, it showed the driver's side, it had a gauge. We can get in here. I don't know if this one will actually show me without turning it on. No, it will not. So, oh, there we go. So we can just zoom in. We can see right there on the fuel gauge, we can see the little pump emblem, and it has an arrow on the right-hand side of it saying that the fuel filler neck is on your passenger side of this car. All right, so let's talk about what I think the pros and cons are of having your fuel door either on the driver's side or the passenger side. So on the Chevy, just like the Mustang, if we take a look here, we can see that the fuel door is on the driver's side. All right, the pro to having the fuel tank on the driver's side is, let's say I'm driving my truck right now or driving the Mustang. If I pull up to a fuel pump, all I gotta do is I get out the door and I can just grab fuel from right here, put it into the truck, and then it's right there. It's way more convenient to put it on the driver's side than it is the passenger side. Now, the only real problem I can come up with for having a fuel door on the driver's side versus having it on the passenger side may actually have to do with being on the pickup truck here versus on the Mustang. If you remember on the Mustang, it was on the back of it. I know the truck is a little bit longer than what a Mustang is, but you kind of have the idea. The door is here, the fuel door would be way back here. Where on the truck, it's right here in the middle. So it's real close to the driver door. Let me show you where that actually becomes a problem.
So you can see that I pulled up to the pump. The pump itself is right where the fuel tank would be. And the problem that I run into is there's always stuff right outside the driver door on the driver's side, so
you just have to watch out if you're opening the door. There could be a gust of wind, you smash your door into the wall, which turns out to be a pretty bad day. Nobody wants to do that. But you don't have that problem if you have it on the opposite side. Like in the Camaro, I can just open the door as far as I want because I'm not next to the pump over there. And even one more positive of having it on the passenger side. As a safety point of view, what if you run out of fuel on the highway? Do you want to stand on the side with the road, or would you like to stand on the side away from the road? I can sit here and refuel the car, and I don't have to worry about getting hit by people that are driving by. Now, let's talk about the actual fuel that we're going to be putting into the car. So for car fact number 3, I know you pulled up to the fuel station, you see all the different numbers on there. You have 87, 89. Here on the West Coast, we have 91. And on the East Coast, I know you guys have 93. But have you ever actually wondered what those numbers mean? And I'm sure most of you know that that is just the octane rating of the fuel. When you start to get to things like E85, the 85 and the number E85 is how much ethanol content is supposed to be in there. So that really doesn't have anything to do with octane rating. That's just a whole separate thing. Also goes along with biodiesel, which you get B20 and various other versions of that. Now, how do we actually get the rating for the octane? If you look on the pump, the buttons give you the formula of what they actually use to come up with these ratings. But I'm just like you guys. I never actually looked at the button. All I did was go 91, poke the button, fill my vehicle, and be on my way. So let's see what these actually mean. This formula that's written on the pump, it's known as the anti-knock index, or also just known as the pump octane rating. Now, if you take a look at it, it says R plus M. So what the R stands for is RON, which is the research octane number. And how they get this number is they've built this special engine in a research lab. And what this engine has is variable compression. So as they're running fuel through there, they can change the compression of the engine and they can see when the engine starts to pre-detonate, which is pre-ignition or knock. And what the M stands for in the formula is motor octane number. Now they do basically kind of the same thing. In RON, they will run the engine at about 600 RPMs. In the motor octane number, what they're gonna do is they're gonna run it at a higher RPM, and instead of changing compression a whole bunch, they're gonna start changing ignition timing and various other things so they can find out when the fuel is gonna start to pre-detonate like they do in the other engine. What they do for our actual octane rating, they take what they found in RON and they find in MON, and they're gonna add them together, divided by 2, and that's how we're gonna get our pump octane number, or just the regular octane you see on there, your 87, 89, 91, or 93 octane, depending on where you live. And that's how they get that octane number. Now that we got fuel in there, there's other things that we have to put in our cars, and specifically oil. We gotta change our oil every once in a while, and there's one thing that I hear wrong so many times that I need to correct. So if you take a look at the oil bottle, you can see right there, it says 0W40. And do you even know what the W stands for? Everybody seems to think that it means weight, and that's not what it means. So for car fact number 4, the W that's in your oil rating, that stands for winter. It's showing you the different ratings that it has for winter. So we'll break down the numbers here. We got 0W40. Wow, the first number, what that means, that is the viscosity of the oil when the oil is cold. So like when it's outside in winter and it's cold, you wanna have a lower number because it's gonna flow a little bit better than a higher number. And the number after the W, that stands for what the oil is supposed to be at in its viscosity at operating temperature. It is a dual viscosity oil. That's why you have 0W40. Now, if it's just a 50 weight or 30 weight, that W is gonna stand for weight. But in a dual viscosity, it stands for winter. The other question I get asked a lot is what oil should I be running in my car? And basically all you gotta do is look at your owner's manual. Your owner's manual will tell you what oil to run based on what the temperature is outside. Because when it's colder outside, you can run a thinner oil. When it's hotter outside, you can run a thicker oil. The thicker oil is better when it's hot outside because it's hot. The oil is going to be thinner because it's going to be warmer out already than what it is when it's cold out in the winter. Just think of two different places. If I lived in Phoenix, Arizona, and if I lived in Alaska, there's gonna be two different temperatures outside. So depending on how cold it is or how warm it is, your book is going to say what oil you should be using at that temperature. There are certain times when you're gonna start using different oils if you're getting into racing applications or anything like that. But if you just have a stock engine and you're just driving around normally, the engineers have figured out what oil you should be running in that engine. There are bearing clearances that the oil needs to be able to go through. If you run way too thick of an oil through something that is made for something way thinner, you might not be able to get that thick oil through the bearings, and then you're gonna wear out your bearings because you don't have any oil there because it couldn't get any oil there. So always run what is recommended in your car unless it's been changed, unless you've changed bearing clearances, you've done stuff like that. If you're just running a stock engine, stock oil specifications are just fine. Now for car fact number 5, I'm gonna give you guys a little bit more of a fun fact. So I'm sure everybody's driven a newer car around, and a lot of the new cars, on most of them anyway, they come with cruise control. You know that little button you push and it will help maintain your speed as you're driving down the road? Well, I'm gonna teach you a little history on that. Back in 1948, there was this American engineer named Ralph Teeter. I don't know if that's how you pronounce his last name, but that's how it's spelt, so that's how I'm gonna pronounce it for now. Well, the fun fact about him is Ralph Teeter was blind. He couldn't see. So one day he was riding around with his lawyer, and his lawyer kept speeding up and slowing down, and he got really tired of it, and he invented cruise control. So your quick fun fact that you can tell everybody is cruise control was invented by a blind guy. For car fact number 6, I'm gonna say something that someone will probably argue with me. Snow does not cause your vehicles to rust. Now, I've lived most of my life in places where it snows. I grew up in Alaska and I live in Reno now. It doesn't snow as much here as it does up there, but it still gets a good amount of snow down here. So if it's not snow that's causing the rust in these vehicles, what is? The thing that causes your vehicles to rust is salt. Now, they're not using kosher salt to salt the roads, but they are using what's called road salt, which is the same mineral that they use to make table salt. And it's very corrosive to cars. Now, to prove my point, I don't drive this thing around in the snow, obviously. It's not that great, but it has driven around in the snow. I drive this thing. This is my Chevy K1500. This is what I actually drive around when it snows too much because it's 4-wheel drive. Now, let's take a closer look at this thing. If we come over here, you can see, look at the panels. There's no holes in the body panels at all. It's still solid metal. And if we come down here and we take a look at the frame, like if you look right there, you can see the frame itself is in good shape. There's a little bit of surface rust, but that's normal. It's an old truck. It's going to happen. But what we don't see is a truck that is falling apart from rust. You know, on the East Coast, for some reason, they keep wanting to salt the roads and all of their vehicles get destroyed. Now, we don't get vehicles from the East Coast over here where I live very often, but every once in a while, a dealership will buy a car at an auction and it will come from the East Coast. I was out at this dealership and I got to see this truck that just came in. I can show you all these little spots. If you look, you can see where the paint is starting to come apart and the rust is starting to eat away at the metal. And if you look at the exhaust tips here, you can see the big holes that have already been eaten into the exhaust pipe. And look at the difference between the frame rails on this truck versus what were on my pickup truck. This is a newer Silverado versus my 1997. My truck is 25 years old and it looks way better than this one does. All right, I got one more fact for you guys. This is fact number 7, and it's probably the most important one. So all of you guys out there who are buying all these cars to attract the ladies, well, the fact is, cars don't attract ladies, they attract other guys.